let's talk about this swing, Justin. So in this video, we are going to break down the foundational aspects of a swing and what to look for, as well as the individualized things that pertain to your individual swing, right? And where you need to go with it, and the thought process behind why those things need change. And then afterwards, I'm going to send you a bunch of rails and what have you that give you professional references of the pros doing these moves, right? So that way you see what it's supposed to look like in your own swing. And that will allow you to work on these things when you go to the field with like other teammates and what have you, right? Throughout the spring and the summer and so on, because development should never stop. So let's get into it. So when we look at this, right, the first thing that we always do is draw a triangle. And the reason why is we want to see if you're in like a balanced athletic position to start. Now this is a great stance that you're in if you are not tense. If you are tense, then you need to find a very similar version of this that allows you to be loose and calm. If you're getting tense too early, your muscles are going to tighten up and you're not going to be able to hit the ball as hard because you're not going to be able to move as fluidly, as well as you're not going to be able to move as quickly and athletically, right? So as long as you feel athletic and loose here, I would not change a thing about the stance, right? So that's the first thing. From there, what we should discuss is how the stance typically should be designed to allow you to get into an efficient launch position. And the only difference between like the body layout, not necessarily the body moves, is the width of the base. Because we're striding forward, right? Your back foot, generally speaking, doesn't move forward or back into your stride to have both feet planted. So the triangle gets just a little bit wider. The base gets a little bit wider. All right? The first thing we're going to look at now, moving into the swing and the movements, is do you have a leg kick that has a negative move or do you go directly forward? And when do you trigger your hand load based off of your front foot, right? So rhythmically speaking, what we really want to do is have these hands and the elbow work back into the lat as we stride forward. Some guys will do it a little bit earlier and have the ability to like hold the bat there and just sit there. That can create some sort of tension, right? Much to the point of the stance. So you want to avoid that. But if it doesn't really create tension within the body and you can stay loose and calm while holding it in that position, then that's fine, right? So let's see how you approach this. Let's play this forward. Well, I know how you do it. It's just, yeah. All right. So as soon as you start to sway, we already see that the hands and the elbow start to come back. And it's not too off, right? But what I will say is we already know that the hands are going to be in the spot they finish at as you have the foot approach the ground, not necessarily when the foot hits the ground. So like right there, see? So now you're going to hold it, foot's down. And you just hold that spot, right? From there, right, like I said, it's a matter of are you tense? If you're not tense and your hands are calm, they're just working fluidly and slowly into that position. So you can be athletic and quick when you do land and create tension once you land as opposed to while you stride and load. Well, then you're good, right? So the next part of this, right, is as we stride forward, do we coil our hip and do we keep a good vertical shin angle while our knee to hip ratio is still working inward, right? In terms of distance between the two. So if we look here, right, this is a pretty good position, but if we were to look at the vertical shin angle, it's working this way, right? And now a lot of guys will have this back knee roll out in terms of direction, but they won't lose the vertical shin angle. They'll keep and this could be functional strength for you, I'm not sure, right? Or mobility, like range of motion. But generally speaking, our goal should be to keep our shin as vertical as we possibly can while keeping that hip inside the shin. And the reason why that is, and we could see it right here in this frame, is that everything you have set up right here tells me you're going to lean, lean, lean. And then that's telling me you're going to land either 60-40 or too far back. And then you're going to have to compensate somewhere else in order to create energy that you missed out on linearly. Anyways, so so then we go forward and we pause it. Okay. Now, at this frame, this looks pretty good, right? And it is. It's pretty solid, and it's much better than where we started, like, at the beginning of the winter, around, like, December, right? Or January. So, if we were to dot this up, right, which is how I approach this, you can, and then you draw lines, you can see here, right, the back foot, and the front foot are outside of the front knee and the back knee. The back knee's alignment to the shoulder blade is almost aligned. I'd say it's a little bit off, but you're generally speaking about 60-40, right? You might be a little bit more than 60-40, which plays into my point prior, but this isn't bad. And then the front foot should always be, or the front knee, sorry, should always be outside of the front shoulder. And this tells us here that you're in the right spot. If you were someone who was lunging, right, it would be the reverse of this, right? You would have the front, if this was the front side, right, the front shoulder would be out in front of the front knee, and then we'd be over our front side, right? So that's something you were doing a lot at the beginning, right? You were rotating around your front hip as opposed to rotating around your back hip, which was creating a lunge, and that's gotten dramatically better, right? So then, from there, we're going to talk about the thing that I always talk about, which is the hands. So the hand height is very important to understand. So the thing I told you is you want to have your hands about top of the zone, right? Or slightly above the top of the zone. Now, the issue here that I've noticed in this film is the knob direction works too steep, which means you have to fight to come back up. So here, I'll show you what I mean. So this frame right here tells us that the barrel's going to have to go this way, right? And then in order to get to the top of the zone again, we're going to have to keep climbing. That's what we're trying to remove by having the hands higher, right? We're trying to create less of a steep angle with the bat to come to the top of the zone. This is why in modern baseball, right, pitchers live at the top of the zone because the hitters are having to work back up towards the top of the zone. Now, with old school philosophies, those that actually did them versus feel versus real, they said throw low and outside at the knee. And the reason why that was because guys would do this, right? And then they'd be on plane with the pitch for like half a second. They'd have to perfectly time that pitch within like this window as opposed to getting on plane back here like we're working on in modern hitting, right? So the same rule applies to you, right? If you look at the top part of the zone. If this is the top of the zone and your bat's going to go, look at the distance it has to come back up and look at the distance that you're going to have in regards to being on plane with the ball. That should explain to you exactly why I've been like, hands got to be up, hands got to be up. And in having the hands up, right, and getting the barrel to work rearward, and you getting on plane early, now you are on plane with this pitch early, right, like more back here, and you're on plane with this pitch early, like back here, as opposed to having like this distance for both. I mean, this is just a rough draft, right? This is like just an estimate, but you get my point. Hopefully, I drew a good picture here, so that way you can see exactly what I'm talking about. And the other thing to keep in mind when talking about this is where is the pitcher throwing from? The pitcher's throwing from a hill, right? So the pitch that pros are going to look for is up in the zone. That's where they look, is up in the zone, because down in the zone takes longer to get to from a distance standpoint, right? So you can, if your eyes are looking up top of the zone, right, and then the pitch is low, there's adjustability there because there's a timing difference because the distance. But if we have such a swing deficiency that makes us work like back up to the zone and the window that we're working with is so little, right? The margin of error is much smaller, right? You're not gonna like you're gonna have a much higher chance of having um, things not work out the way you intended. All right. Now, yeah, I think that's all I need to really say in regards to that. I think you understand that. All right. So now when we talk about what do we look at in the lower half outside of that angle is like you want to have this hip coiled back as you stride forward, and you want to hold that into landing, and then you want this and this, right? So I'm gonna watch the hip. I know that you do. The relationship between the knee and the back hip is really good. It's just the vertical shin angle here. So I'm gonna watch and see if you coil that hip. So no. So see how your back pocket's direction doesn't like start to work more towards like this kid over here. Like when we watch. Right there. See how it's the same? It's pretty much always the same. The direction isn't really working that way. Like, yeah, it ends up there when you land, but that's just because your backside's moving forward, right? Because the stride. It's not necessarily the directional angle of the hip itself. All right? So that's something that needs to be focused on. I mean, there's a lot of components that make a professional swing, and, like, you just want to chip away at one thing at a time. Don't go into the cage and think of, like, I got to do this, I got to do that. Don't think of that. Start in sequential order, right? Go through the video and be like, okay, am I doing this well? Do I understand this? Am I creating this muscle memory and motor preference? And then it's like, okay, I'm doing that. Okay, what's next? And then you're just checking boxes, and eventually you're going to have a good product, right? So, and you always have to do things in sequential order, because if you have something later on that you're working on, but there's a flaw in the beginning, the flaw in the beginning can definitely play into the flaw later on, right? So you always have to backtrack and re-reference the beginning movements, which is how I watch each of your film when we're at practice. So when we're going to talk about hip shoulder separation, which is like another thing that you're going to have to understand at a point, right? Hip shoulder separation is when the hips start and the knees start to rotate while we hold the shoulders closed as the barrel works behind us. All right? Because what happens is the shoulders stay closed. We allow the barrel to get behind the shoulder here, and then it creates that whiplash effect. Because what happens is the knee will drive down, the hip will follow the knee, and then the shoulders will follow them. So if we're creating separation between each move, because if we're thinking knee, once the knee comes down, the hip's going to start moving, right? And as soon as that starts to happen, the barrel will start. All right, so knee comes down, hip starts to follow that direction, right? And then the shoulder will start to rotate following. So it'll be like 1, 2, 3, or like. And then what's going to happen is in between these two, in between the knee and the hip, the barrel will start working behind you. And then it will, in the last snap, right, where we get to the shoulders, everything will just go. Right? So that's why I told you have to think like drive knee down, because in a lot of cases, when you were swinging before, you were driving the knee upward and the hips were going up because of it, and it's not as athletic and sharp because it's a longer move to like this as opposed to like just roll your hip or unravel your hip, uncoil your hip, unroll your back knee, right? Uncoil your back knee. So same stuff. All right. Pretty close to done here. 1 second, my computer's like lagging. All right, I think we're good. All right, so then from here, and we can see the path, and you see that everything is just upward, so it's going to work the same there. So let's see, knee comes down. Knee's relatively pretty good. All right, so then from here, we're going to keep going through. Play it, and get to the point of contact. This point of contact's, like, pretty much as good as it's gonna get, honestly. This front leg has a little bit more that can come out of it, so there's slight energy there. Let me double check to make sure that the flexion that's there isn't just recoil. No, it's not. Just in there. Okay, so then you lock it out through extension. So yeah, so just a little bit of energy that was left on the table on this specific swing. But overall, this position is where you want to be. And let me check one more thing here. The pivot on the back foot. Yep, there's a slight release of the pivot of the back foot, which is good. Which means that this knee and this hip direction is influencing good directional energy to allow your backside forward, right? So a lot of dudes who need to work on extension through the ball don't release their back foot, and they think like, air quotes, squish the bug. And squish the bug is a rotational move here, which leads them to not getting good extension through the ball and just like rolling over and hitting balls where Ari is, basically. So good directional energy with the knee and the back leg and the hip lead to good extension with the barrel head, as opposed to if you have this foot spinning out and you're just like rolling, you're going to end up having your everything just like open up this way. All right. Let's see. And you have relatively good extension through the ball. And we can see that, right? And the way you would look at extension through the ball, so this is point of contact. At the point of contact, we want to create as much flexion in the bicep as we possibly can. And then where the extension comes through is as this arm straightens out from flexion to extension, right? So we want to keep positive, good directional energy through the ball through extension. And you can see there that you do. You can see there that you're finishing through the ball, and then you're allowing, once this arm gets completely straight, you're allowing the swing to finish. So that's all good stuff. Now, this last image here, like, I think you really need to dramatize the knee down stuff, because you can see there's a slight transfer of energy that's taking place. But that rotation there into the swing is good. It's just that recoil there. It's telling me that you're not allowing that back hip to work through the ball as much as it could. So again, another slight energy base change. Nonetheless, dude, like, for a high school freshman, this is a really good swing. So, like, you're really heading in the right direction, which is why I said to you in text, when you said thank you about, like, you're prepared, it's like, I'm just telling you what I'm seeing, right? Like, then, like, in the fall, when I'm watching your fielding for a freshman is pretty solid as well, and you're heading in the right direction when talking about, like, the gap between you and the varsity starters isn't so significant, right? And they're seniors and you're freshmen. By the time you're a senior, as long as you keep working at it the way you are, you're going to surpass those that you've looked up to your whole life. All right, I'm going to send you some rails, and I'm also going to send you, you know what I mean, like, some other stuff in regards to, like, where you need to go with your development, and then we'll go from there. So let me know what you think.